right, well, we now have a buffet of COVID vaccines to choose from based on this latest FDA approval. It's the non-mRNA COVID vaccine from Novavax, and they have approved it for anyone over the age of 12 or 12 and older. Did they run clinical trials? They did not. Did they run trials on animals like last year's COVID vaccines? No. They say that they approved this based on previous safety and effectiveness data. That's not even a clinical trial. That's not even what this is. It's just that they looked at the previous round of Novavax and said, this one's probably the same. It's not. It's not at all the same. The previous one was 2 doses. This one's only 1.
Isn't there a law against that? Like if I wanted to come out with my own thing.
No.
Like, hey guys, tonight on Redacted, I've come up with my own shot. I'm going to do that tonight, and I mix some stuff up, and I think it's safe based on other data that I read. You guys want to try it?
That's actually more common than you think, but the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccine was approved with the very same method. We showed you that when that was approved in September. What they did was they evaluated the data from the rollout of the first COVID vaccine and said, this one's probably the same, approved. They had no clinical trials for this one. So as I was thinking about that, I want to talk more about what this vaccine, what they at least tell us, what they're admitting to. But I was thinking about all of the new pharmaceuticals that we've covered in the last, let's say, 6 months that have been approved based on either emergency use authorization or fast track or something that they call priority review, meaning they speed it to market. So I went through just the ones we've talked about recently. Now, here's a short list that I made. So Arexvy was the RSV vaccine for 65 and over. They gave that priority review. They did do some clinical trials, but they did not show us them in totality. You may remember we talked about this. Beyfortus was the RSV shot. It's not a vaccine for babies. They fast-tracked it. They also did clinical trials, but they never gave us the data from that clinical trials. You may remember that we talked about this. It only said not available. Zurzuvae, the postpartum depression pill,
that flows off
was
the tongue.
Also fast-tracked, did not do clinical trials. The COVID vaccine from Pfizer and Moderna was given emergency use authorization, no clinical trials. And the COVID vaccine Novavax, now emergency use authorization, no clinical trials. So
how, and they're getting emergency use authorization for this one? Also,
this
still,
one also,
what emergency?
Well, that's a great question, Clayton. They explain it in their letter to Novavax. Take a look here at what they say. They said, we have determined that there is a public health emergency or a significant potential for a public health emergency. So when you're asking why are we doing this, it's like, it could be serious, so we're going to rush it. Well, it also could be unsafe. We're making that calculation for you. Like the vaccine could have some problems. We're choosing not to study it because there's a potential. There's a potential for an emergency. Yes, there's a public health emergency.
So then under that authorization, every year then they could lay claim to flu shots and all of that stuff, right? I mean,
yes.
This could just be a permanent emergency. And this is like emergency use powers for these guys, the same way that Biden is holding on to emergency wartime powers.
Right. Absolutely right. So, and you have to ask yourself, is this now how we approve fast tracks now so that everything can get a fast track and nothing then has to have clinical trials by that rationale, right? Why would you ever do a clinical trial knowing that, think about the RSV injectable. They were giving it to pregnant women and it was causing them to go into preterm labor and killing the babies. And so they're like, well, we have to stop that. They still don't have that one out yet because they had that happening. Think about if they could make the case for emergency use, then they would only know that these preterm babies were dying based on what they call it phase 4 of the clinical trials, which means it's data that we're going to get to this more. It's data that they collect when they've already released it to market. So let's go back to this one that we're talking about. Where were we? Potential. Okay, so let's talk about the Novavax vaccine. How does the FDA know that it is safe and effective? They don't. Here is from the Novavax fact sheet that comes with the vaccine. It says clinical trials results and supporting data. Now that's misleading because they had no clinical trials. They're just saying this is based on the effectiveness of the previous Novavax COVID-19 vaccine, the original monovalent, and then the Omicron BA.1 and the monovalent Omicron BA.5. So they don't have any for this current recipe. They don't think they need it. They made a new shot. This one is single dose. It's not a double dose like the last one. But again, they're just like probably the same. Again, this is hardly apples to apples, given that this one is only one vaccine. Also, the Novavax vaccine that we're talking about now is updated to include the Omicron strain XBB.1.5. Well, you may remember that, was it Jimmy Kimmel? One of the Jimmys, the late night talk show, did that like XBB.1.5.
No, that was Oh, that was Jimmy Fallon.
Okay, yeah. Yes, that guy.
Well, he did that stupid thing, and then
that was a long time ago.
What's the other guy who the Late Show with Stephen Colbert did the vaccine dance?
Yeah,
with the
so you may remember that is a lame joke. It's long since past its lifetime because XBB.1.5 is not very prevalent at all in the United States. Look at the CDC tracker. It's hard to see here where XBB.1.5 is. I highlighted it here. It says that it represents a 1.1% of all COVID cases right now. And so if I sort of scroll over it, and let's just look at that in a bar graph, how much that is. We'll go to the next one. This green here, not that one. Yes, see the green is XBB.1.5. It's not very prevalent at all. So EG5 is the dominant strain right now. Why would you get an untested vaccine for a dying out strain that is no longer even prevalent?
Because it's an emergency.
For the potential.
It's a potential emergency.
Potentially, yes.
So it's not effective.
It's a non-zero probability.
Yeah, it's an emergency. Go grab it.
Now, what are the risks? According to Novavax, one of the risks is that it doesn't work or it lowers your immunity. Look at their list of potential risks, maybe allergic reactions.
Now, to be clear,
yeah,
this is Novavax's own documents.
This is their vaccine fact sheet. It says, limitations of vaccine effectiveness, that it just may not protect all vaccine recipients. That's number 5. Like, it may just not work on you. That's one of them. Also, look at number 5.4, altered immunocompetence, like it may lower your immunity. Don't we take these to increase our immunity? Thought that was the point, but maybe I'm missing the point. Also, of course, myocarditis and pericarditis. Interesting, though, that those things are listed and have been observed in Novavax, because that makes me think that the myocarditis reaction is less related to mRNA technology and more related to something in these vaccines commonality, because this is not, remember, it's not an mRNA technology vaccine. They also had, in the original study of the original vaccine, they had several people who had cardiomyopathy and cardiac failure, many of them hospitalized. So we learned recently from a study in Europe that participants can be screened for heart inflammation after COVID vaccines by testing the troponin in their bloods. And if you see it, if you see high markers, you think, oh, that person has some heart inflammation, you better not exercise or exert yourself in the next 2 weeks, and we'll test it again. And if you're better, then you're all good. So we have the technology to protect people from being harmed by this myocarditis, but we lack the inspiration to do so because we think just putting it on the fact sheet is enough. We just don't do it. And lastly, are they effective? Meaning, do they protect against severe COVID, hospitalization, and death? Well, we can't possibly know that if they weren't tried, but the original vaccine trial shows some reduction in reported COVID cases and hospitalizations following this vaccine. But given that we know how overreported COVID cases were and how the CDC bases its idea of success of the vaccine based on rates of patients on ventilators, we just can't say that right now. Nobody really can. So we've seen during the pandemic that sometimes the FDA is giving this emergency use authorization to a drug, and then they do the clinical trials after. That's what happened last fall when we got the boosters in the fall of 2021. They said, well, we only tested it on 8 mice, but we are continuing to do tests. We are running clinical trials now. They started at the same time that they started rolling out the vaccine. I don't know if you remember that. It was a whole year ago. They don't seem to have a plan to do that this year. But what they will do, because it's required by law, is phase 4 or post-marketing trials. What that means is they study and collect adverse events as it's rolled out, because the vaccine makers are required to collect and report that data. Doctors are not. The whole adverse events, it's a bit of a sham, but at least the pharmaceuticals are required to report that. So basically, that means you, if you take this, are the first clinical trial. So if you go and take it, you should at least have this informed consent that this has not been tested on anybody. I am the clinical trial. So if you take it, you should know that, right?
Right.
The CDC has already recommended this Novavax vaccine. They did it when they recommended the Pfizer and Moderna vaccine last month, but they're going to sort of update their recommendation so it goes into the schedule and taxpayers will pay for it on the federal government. Novavax says they have 6 million doses ready to ship. So
sign me up.
Based on all of that data, let us know what you think. You are still at a free will to choose. And
are we?
That's what we get. In some places. Some people in some places. I have seen vaccine mandates come back in certain universities as well.
Well, in Canada, we know that there absolutely are mandates for doctors. And so in British Columbia specifically, doctors who are being forced to take it and they're going to be moving or they have to do it. Otherwise, they're going to lose their medical license, actually. Unbelievable. Let us know your thoughts on that in the comments below. Again, Dr. Makis is going to be joining us here in a few minutes. And for that, we're going to have to go exclusively over to Rumble because we won't be able to talk about it here on this platform. The conversation will be censored, so we won't be able to do it. We do have a Rumble channel, and it is youtube.com. Excuse me, it's not. It's rumble.com is where we go. Rumble.com/redacted is where we're going to be doing that segment a little bit later in the show. But we're still on YouTube for now because our next segment we can at least be here. I guess we'll see. Find out if we can be or not. We'll try to get there in a second. Thank you so much for watching this segment here at Redacted. We are live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, trying to share the stories that the mainstream media will not cover. You should also come over and join our community